the same really quickly yoga your videos off.小助さんも同じですけど。
Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar. I think we'll give it 1 to 2 minutes for everyone to join. For those of you who are just joining, this webinar will be interpreted and translated into Japanese. So if you could please follow the instructions on the screen there by clicking the interpretation button and choosing either English or Japanese, and you will be able to hear the presentation. Right, I think we'll get started. For those of you who have just joined, as I've already mentioned, this webinar will be translated into Japanese. So please follow the instructions on the screen there by clicking the interpretation button and choosing your language of preference. Alex, do you want to next slide? Thank you. So yes, welcome everyone to this Transition Zero webinar. My name's Matt Gray. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Transition Zero. We're excited to have you here today, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. I'm joined by my colleagues, Alex Luter and Joel Yap, who were the lead analysts of this report. We also have a fantastic panel who will be sharing their findings of this report. And just to note that this webinar is about modeling 24/7 carbon-free electricity in Japan. It is part of a series of reports that we have released on this important topic. Before we get started, I'm going to ask the panelists to quickly introduce themselves. Yoko, can we start with you?
Hi, Matthew. Thank you, and hello, everyone. It's really an honor to be on this panel. So my name is Yoko Mulholland. I work at E3G, which is an independent nonprofit climate change think tank. So we're focused on accelerating the transition to a low carbon, climate resilient future by translating climate politics, economics, policies into impactful action. So we work quite closely with governments and civil society, businesses, and other partners to build cross-sector coalitions that lever strategic political and policy outcomes. So in Japan, I work mainly on climate and energy diplomacy. So looking at how international governments can work together with Japan on various different climate and energy areas to push forward the clean energy transition. So really excited to be here and really excited to be part of the panel and the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Yoko. Shinpei, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. My name is Shinpei Osugi. I'm in charge of CTO of JR Cross. JR Cross is a 100% child company of JR Group, which is very responsible for Japanese decarbonization. So that's why we were established recently to lead to provide renewable energy, including 24/7 CFE in Japan. And we are supporting the decarbonization of industry and companies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shinpei. And last but not least, Kentaro.
はい。デジタルグリッドの小菅と申します。本日は、こちらのウェビナーにお招きいただきましてありがとうございます。デジタルグリッドはコーポレート PPA を含めた、発電家さんとですね、需要家さんを直接結びつける、電力の取引プラットフォームというものを開発して運営している会社となります。本日はこういった観点から、日本のコーポレート PPA を進めるといった観点から、いろいろとお話をできればというふうに思っておりますので、よろしくお願いいたします。
Thank you. Next slide, Alex. So as mentioned, Alex and Joelle are going to present the report findings. Then we're going to have a panel discussion. We have allocated 10 minutes to Q&A. You can ask a question at any time by clicking on the Q&A icon on the screen there. Please put your question in. We'll do our best to answer your question in the chat. If we can't do that, we'll bring it into the panel discussion or the Q&A discussion towards the end of the presentation. Next slide, Alex. So for those of you who do not know Transition Zero, we are a climate analytics not-for-profit. We were set up in 2021 to help analysts with energy transition planning. We have 3 core activities. The first is no-code software. We also produce data sets which make our software more useful. And last but by no means least, we have people like Alex and Joelle who take our software and use it to support stakeholders in the markets that we operate in. Currently, we focus on policymakers because policymakers have historically struggled with the cost and complexity of some of the commercial software packages. Our software scenario builder is free, accessible, and no code, meaning that you don't have to have a degree in electrical engineering or energy system modeling to use it. Next slide, Alex. So for those of you who do not understand or are not familiar with this concept of 24/7 CFE, 24/7 CFE is a demand side measure. It is a way for corporations to purchase and account for clean energy on an hourly basis rather than an annual basis. It is becoming increasingly more important. So for example, hourly matching is enshrined in the revisions to the Scope 2 accounting guidance in the GHG protocol. This guidance is currently out for consultation at the moment. At Transition Zero, we believe that locally led least cost electricity planning is an important priority for all governments, but in particular emerging economies and developing countries. And we see 24/7 and other demand side measures as one way of achieving that outcome. Next slide. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this report is part of a series of other reports. We have also released reports on India, Singapore, and we are also releasing reports on Malaysia and Taiwan. The reports themselves are based on open source detailed grid models. Those models that will be made publicly available via our GitHub, which we are going to release in November. And lastly, before I hand it over to Alex and Joelle, the software that we have produced, which is our flagship product, is Scenario Builder. It just came out of private beta a couple of months ago. It currently covers 11 countries. It will soon cover Japan. Hopefully we'll have Japan on platform by the end of the year. It allows you to do capacity expansion and dispatch modeling in several countries. Like I said, it is accessible, transparent, and built on modern technology. You can access Scenario Builder just via our website. All we ask for is your email to register, and would love you to give it a go and provide feedback as we further develop this tool to support policymakers and analysts working on energy transition planning. Now, for the main parts of this webinar, I'll just like to hand over to Alex and Joel to present the findings of this report.
Hello, everyone. So I am Alex. I'll take the beginning of this presentation and then hand over to Joel. Just a quick note, the slide that you're seeing right now is basically the big summary of it, and will take maybe about 10 minutes to get through. After that, there will be a couple of much faster slides. Okay, welcome to talking about carbon-free electricity, hourly matched in the context of Japan. So as Matt has already alluded to, there's a movement right now towards something called 24/7 CFE, carbon-free electricity. This comes from the fact that today in the world, many people can claim that they are consuming clean electricity, but what happens in practice is that once a year, they perform sort of an accounting exercise that verifies that they have acquired enough so-called green energy certificates to match their electricity load. That is to say, their electricity consumption for the year. And this strikes many observers as not necessarily the most intuitive thing. This is because when you use certificates once a year, you can match your consumption at night with electricity generation, for instance, from solar panels, which generated during the day. In practice, what ends up happening is that consumption is actually matched to fossil fuel electricity in practice. And that is not really aligned with the notion that we should transition towards a cleaner energy system. So that's where this initiative arose, that the matching between consumption and generation should happen on an hourly level to avoid the phenomenon of consuming fossil at night and claiming that it's clean. So what we've done in the context of the studies that Transition Zero has organized is look at how countries would have to evolve if by 2030 a certain share of the electricity demand were to shift towards this hourly matching regime. So I'm going to direct you now to the big section on the left, and you can see here a pie chart, which represents in an abstract sense all of Japanese demand. And you can see here that we have this green sliver, which is what we assumed would be participating in hourly matching by the year 2030, 3% of Japanese demand. And what we have done in our analysis is that we've run many different types of scenarios. Obviously, we ran as a default the hourly matching scenario, which is what is standard today. But we have also tried many different hourly matching regimes. And for the hourly matching, as you can see from this stack here, we tried out different ambition levels. Everybody can probably understand what we mean by 100% hourly matching. The consumption is matched to generation perfectly during each hour of the year. But doing everything perfectly can actually be quite expensive. So we allowed for some flexibility. And today, I would like to talk to you about how in 2030, on average, each hour of the year can have 90% of the electricity load matched against carbon-free electricity generation. The final thing that I should mention here is that we've tried out various different technology combinations just in order to assess how the cost escalation as we proceed towards higher and higher levels of ambition, how that could be mitigated. Okay, so having explained conceptually what we are doing in this study, let's dive into the takeaway messages, which are all here on the right-hand side. So we'll focus first on the top right, where we're essentially explaining why Transition Zero has found that by the year 2030, it would make sense for Japanese stakeholders to go for 90% hourly matching. And the argument basically boils down to the cost that the off-takers would have to bear. Now, what I mean by off-taker, this is basically the people who consume electricity, who set up so-called power purchase agreements or PPAs, through which they would consume this carbon-free electricity. And as a reference point, we have here 6 historical years from 2019 to 2014, and we have here in blue the wholesale market price that Japan has experienced on average in these years. And against these blue dots, we have in red the average price for the 6 years. What matters here for, as a conclusion of the study is the final value here on the far right, which basically the number 87 here, dollars per megawatt hour, refers to the annualized costs that the PPA off-takers would have to pay. So this is basically the bumper sticker price on the PPA contract. And the takeaway message here is that at 87, you're less than 113, which is the average wholesale market price for the past 6 years, before COVID, before the invasion by Russia of the Ukraine. So in short, doing 90% hourly matching pays. It is cheaper than the wholesale market price experienced historically. Okay, but this is good for the off-takers. How about the rest of the country? So for that, we move to the middle part here on the right. And you can see here on the left a stack of the capex that the off-takers would have to pay. So I would really like to make this clear. This is not borne by the Japanese public or by Japanese utilities. These are the investments that the consumers pay. In contrast, though, here in black, what we have this figure 1.8. This is $1.8 billion annually. And these are savings. Where do these savings arise from? Well, as you can see by the colors here on the left, we have various technologies that are being invested in, onshore wind, solar, and batteries. And because these are renewables, sometimes the generation is in excess of the load from the off-takers. When there is such an excess generation, then that can be sold back to the wholesale market, meaning that conventional generators on the grid already do not have to generate, meaning that Japan does not have to consume LNG. The import dependency falls, LNG consumption also falls accordingly, and that means that each year $1.8 billion are not spent on natural gas. So the system experiences these savings. Now, this figure in black, 1.8 billion, has implications in terms of emissions as well. So for that, we move to the bottom right. And you can see here 2 colors, purple and black. I will talk with the black. So obviously, we have an expectation of what the emission levels in Japan would be like in 2030. And if you do not consume $1.8 billion worth of LNG, this means that you save 11 megatons of CO2. So from the environmental perspective, this is also very good, and it helps Japan with its nationally determined contributions on climate change. Returning to the off-takers in purple, obviously they want to consume carbon-free electricity. That's what we show here in purple. And relative to consuming business as usual electricity from the grid, they can cut their carbon intensity by more than 80%. So it's a benefit for them as well. Okay, so having talked about that, let's look in greater detail about what happens. What actually gets built here? This is a bit of a complex slide, but I will walk you through it. We will focus first on the left-hand side. What you can see here horizontally are the various scenarios that we have run. So obviously on the left, we have the conventional annual matching. And against that, we have a gray panel containing the various hourly matching scenarios with 90%, the one that we're advocating here in the middle. On the top, we have capacity. On the bottom, we have costs. And there are a couple of things that emerge here. First of all, what you can see is that when you have annual matching, hourly matching doesn't matter by definition. So what you get billed is solar because it's very, very cheap. However, the minute we move into hourly matching, you can see that the structure changes and you can observe that onshore wind appears. This is because onshore wind generates also at night, and this is really handy when you want to have hourly matching. Another thing that we notice is that batteries start appearing when we move into the more ambitious hourly matching scenarios. And this is because they store up electricity to match at nighttime. Importantly, what we also notice is that for 90%, why 90%? The costs barely move when you move from the conventional for annual matching towards the 90% that we advocate. And in fact, when you look at the capacity that is built out, you actually need less capacity. And my colleague Joel will talk a little bit later about how this is a really advantageous when it comes to resource-constrained countries such as Japan. In terms of emissions, we move now to the right-hand side. On the previous slide, we had talked about emissions against business as usual. But when you compare with annual matching, you can see that both in terms of absolute emissions in black and in terms of emissions intensity in purple, you have a net improvement when you move towards hourly matching. Okay, the final thing to say here is that returning to costs, both capacity and cost increase dramatically as we go towards higher ambition. And the literature on carbon-free electricity says that if you add other technologies, this escalation can be mitigated. So we will explore that next. In our study, we actually had something called technology palettes. And so far, what we have explained is a combination of technologies that we group into our so-called palette 1, which contains onshore wind and solar and battery, 6-hour batteries, 6 hours worth of electricity storage. But we tried to see what would happen to costs if we add further technologies. So in our second palette, we added a form of long duration energy storage called liquid air. This is distinguished from battery storage because batteries can store, in our assumptions, electricity for 6 hours, whereas liquid air, based on our literature review, and talking to stakeholders, can store electricity for up to 1 week, so substantially longer. In our third palette, we have also included 2 technologies that are of interest to the Japanese government, and those are gas with CCS and the co-firing of hydrogen and of ammonia. So let's see what happens to costs and capacities when we add these things. Okay, on this slide is a little bit more complex, but I will walk you through this as well. On the left, we have capacities. On the right, we have costs. The structure is identical. We have here on the first stack, we have the 90% hourly matching just with renewables and batteries. And everything else, these other 3 on the right, these are hourly matching with 100% load coverage. The first stack here on the right refers to just renewables and battery only, and you can see very clearly the escalation of both capacities and costs, basically a doubling of capacity and a near doubling of costs. We have here all technologies thrown together. So this is actually palette 3 that we're showing you here. And you can see very clearly that there is a contraction in capacity between 25% and 30% I'm sorry, a quarter and a third of capacity, and between 20 to 30% on costs. So by adding around 2 gigawatts of gas and liquid air storage, you have saved actually a lot. And this is extremely beneficial for a country with problems adding renewables such as Japan. Again, something that Joel will talk about. There are here 2 stacks on the right-hand side, which are distinguished on the issue of how CCS performs. Again, this is something that Joel will clarify later, but the point is that adding new technologies can save a lot, which is a good thing. To wrap up on my final slide, I would like to just give a brief overview of the entire combination of scenarios that we have run here. So you can see here horizontally all of our technology palettes, 1 through 3, all of our scenarios, and under them you can see the build out that occurs in the model. Takeaway messages are that basically up to 90% matching, there's hardly any change in terms of the capacity mix on the left or the emission savings that the country sees on the right. These technologies are really needed once you escalate the ambition level towards the very high, to the highest extreme. There's no point in Japan going there immediately, but as the ambition becomes tighter, then you want to consider these other things. So without further ado, I will stop and I will let Joel now talk about our 2 sensitivities.
Thanks, Alex. Can I confirm everyone hear me? All right. Thanks, Alex, again for walking us through those headlight findings. I will now take us through the next session, which we have prepared 2 sensitivities. As everyone see on this slide, you can probably guess that the first sensitivities that we have prepared for everyone is on CCS. As Alex has presented, CCS is extremely useful in reducing capacity requirement at high hourly ambitions. However, we found that the usefulness of CCS is actually highly sensitive to 2 impactful input assumptions that haven't yet been tested out robustly in the real world. And both assumptions affect directly a key performance metrics of CCS, which is the final sequestration rate. So before we review what those 2 input assumptions are, let's quickly unpack what do we mean by final sequestration rate first. So what I would like to direct everyone to the top left chart. Alex's mouse is around there. So as we all know, CO2 is emitted when fossil fuels are combusted to generate electricity, which is the first column. A portion of this emission is captured, and that's what we call the capture rate, which is a pink column here. Of the CO2 that is captured, a further portion leaked during we call the during transport before being permanently stored underground, which is the last column on the top left chart, the blue color. The product of these 2 percentages give us the final sequestration rate, which in another word represent the overall share of emitted CO2 that is ultimately stored permanently underground. Having explained what sequestration rate means, let's review what are the 2 input assumptions that matter the most. They are where the sequestration happens locationally and what the sequestration rate itself is. So now I would like to direct everyone's attention to the top right chart, which shows CCS uptake in gigawatt term for Tokyo under the 100% hourly matching ambition. Here, we have fixed the final sequestration rate at 70%, which is our assumed study design, as indicated by the gray background, and tested 2 different transport and storage cost value. In the first stack, CO2 is stored domestically in Japan. In the second, the captured CO2 is shipped and store roughly 5,000 kilometers away in Sarawak, Malaysia. You might be wondering why Malaysia. That's because we understand that there is a memorandum of understanding between the Japanese and Malaysian government to store, to potentially store CO2 in Malaysia. As you can see, in the Malaysia case, in second stack, the gas CCS uptake, which is the gray color like row, disappear completely, meaning that with higher shipping costs, CCS become too expensive for the model to build any capacity. So we have talked about the locational impact on sequestration. How about the sequestration rate itself? To contextualize our study a little bit more, we have prepared the top bottom left chart. You can see that our assumptions is less stringent than the rate commonly used by the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, meaning that our CCS essentially leaks more. So for every 100 megawatt hours electricity generation, our CCS will leaks 30 megawatt hours, while IPCC will leaks like 5 megawatt hour. And however, our assumed 70% sequestration rate is still much more generous than what real world application actually report. And it's also it's worth noting that as shown in pink color, those are capture rate. As I have explained earlier, those are not the final value. It doesn't account for the potential loss when transporting and eventually injecting it underground, which imply that the final true sequestration rate is even lower, and that's a concern. Which that's a concern, and we decided to test what happened to the usefulness of CCS in our study if that's the case. So I would like to direct everyone to the bottom right chart now. We have prepared 2 additional experiment here, which we use 60% and 55% final sequestration rate. So our analysis found that if the final sequestration rate falls below 55%, gas CCS is no longer cost competitive enough to see any uptake at all. So while that's all for CCS, the key takeaway message here is that, for CCS to be truly useful, at least 55% of the CO2 resulting from combustion need to be stored in Japan. And we hope this helps policymakers understand better what some of the potential technological risks associated with gas CCS. So now that we have covered the first sensitivity, Alex, can we move to the next slide, please? Now we have covered the first sensitivity. The second one that we have prepared here is going to look at local renewable constraint. We found that while there might be local renewable constraint in certain regions in Japan, there seems to be sufficient renewable potential and interconnector capacity in the country to overcome these local constraints. To explain this further, let's focus on the top chart. Here we have grouped Japan 9 grid region into 2 clusters with different background colors that match the map shown in the bottom left charts, where Alex mouse cursor is moving around there. The yellow region represent areas with high electricity loads, and the blue regions represent areas with high renewable potential. You will also see 2 shades of green in the legend. The lighter green shows the estimated renewable potential, while darker green shows the capacity requirement needed to achieve our recommended 90% hourly matching scenario. Now, what we see that in the high load region, which is the yellow color, the yellow ones, the renewable potential is consistently lower than what's required for 90% hourly matching, which indicate local renewable constraints. But as we move into the high renewable potential zone, which is the blue, the pattern flips completely. Renewable potential becomes consistently higher than the capacity requirement. So is this going to be a big problem for Japan? Let's move on to the bottom left chart and unpack this a little bit more. So we have prepared two time series that correspond to the same regional grouping with same color. The blue line represents total untapped maximum hourly renewable potential, order from highest to lowest. And the yellow line shows the unmet hourly clean electricity demand in the high load zone, the yellow zones during those corresponding same hours. And the results are quite clear. In about 95% of all hourly periods, the clean electricity demand that can't be met in the high load zone could actually be covered by generation from other part of the country. And that is before adding any additional batteries. So if we have proven that there's enough clean electricity nationwide to serve the 3 high load zones, the next question is, do we have enough spare interconnector capacity to deliver that power from other part of the country to those regions? For this, let's look at the bottom right chart. Here we show the spare interconnector capacity between those high load zones, Tokyo, Chubu, and Kansai, and the rest of the country, represented by 3 different curves, different color as well. Without that, for Tokyo and Kansai, there's always sufficient spare interconnector capacity to bring in electricity from other regions. However, for the Chubu region, there are indeed some hours where the spare capacity is insufficient. That said, it is still possible that Chubu could indirectly import electricity via its interconnection with Tokyo and Kansai. So that brings us to the end of the second sensitivity. We hope, the key takeaway message is that we hope that this helps demonstrate that there is sufficient renewable generation and interconnector capacity across the country to overcome potential local renewable constraint. Of course, this is still a back of the envelope calculation, but so far, the result looks sensible and promising, and we are looking forward to investigating this further in the future. And that's all, I believe, from me and Alex. I would now pass back to Matt to continue our session.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Joel, for that brilliant presentation. Before we hand it over to the panel, we have a question, Alex or Joel, which is, how feasible is it to store 55% of carbon capture in Japan? Are there financially viable sites?
Thank you for that. I'll try my best. So I would like to clarify the scale of the CCS required. And I return here to the slide, which shows the results across all of our scenarios. So CCS obviously shows up only in our technical palette 3, and in the 100% matching scenario, that's where it shows up the most. The scale is not that big. If you look here, this feels like something of the order of magnitude of 2 or 3 gigawatts. So this is probably either 2 very large plants or maybe 3 or 4 medium-sized ones. Now, where is there CCS in Japan currently? There is a site in Hokkaido at a place called Tomakomai, where, if I'm not mistaken, the CCS capacity that is deployed is 200 megawatts. And I've just seen an article in the news this morning saying that they aim to have it commercialized by the year 2030. Now, obviously, 200 megawatts is literally an order of magnitude smaller than the 2 gigawatts that we calculate here. So, yeah, there needs to be more. But let's engage with the question of the audience member. Is it feasible? So the site at Tomakomai was chosen because there is underground storage available right next door, geologically. And there are lots of other different sites in Japan that can handle CCS. 2 gigawatts doesn't look like too much, especially not over the long term. I guess what we can say here is that there's always a trade-off between CCS and other technologies, in particular the long duration energy storage. So if CCS cannot pick up the slack for CFE, then something else will have to. So are there sites? Yes. Are they financially viable? The assumption is that the off-takers would have to pay for it, essentially. But technically, the potential is there.
Great, thanks, Alex. We have no more questions, so let's move on to the panel discussion. I'm a little conscious of time, so yeah, let's just jump straight in. So I'm going to ask the panelists to share some reflections of the report, and then I'm going to ask them a question based on their area of expertise. So Yoko, do you want to go first and just give some reflections on the report, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say first that this scenario modeling software that Transition Zero provides, I think it's really sort of, it helps build capacity and also kind of awareness among commercial industrial consumers, like especially for SMEs in Japan who may lack the in-house expertise. So I just wanted to say it's like a brilliant work that you're doing here in Japan. I think specifically for this report, I think this report really provides evidence that, 24/7 carbon-free electricity can actually support with, cost savings from avoided fossil fuel use. And having these evidence points around how 24/7 CFE can see cost savings from avoided fossil fuels. And from this, it will be interesting to see how these findings can help sort of catalyze more new investments in renewables, grid innovation, decarbonization technologies needed for Japan's GX ambitions. I think what needs to maybe come next is really understanding what the enabling policies are, that are missing to transform how electricity is procured and also consumed, and then moving towards a future grid that is always powered by clean sources. So, for example, around the necessity for more robust interconnectors for grids, I think, this report will be really useful to spur on discussions within the Japanese government, and also a sort of good, constructive sort of dialogue point for other country governments who have already started to look at this, to share knowledge and also best practice around this. I think maybe despite some of the recent setbacks on the sort of Japanese policy side we've been seeing, I think we have still been seeing like strong continuous momentum on international investor and also consumer expectations for corporate sustainability. And this is, leading to a rising demand for 100% clean energy procurement from progressive businesses in Japan, especially those who have a sort of, big international reputation. E3G actually did a study on business perspectives on shifting to renewable electricity for 15 countries, and we also looked at Japan. So in Japan, we actually saw that almost all, I think it was like 96% of Japanese senior business respondents to the poll, they actually expressed a desire to transition from fossil fuels to a renewable-based electricity system. But I think about 36% said that, we need financial incentives required to, make this happen. This is called the Powering Up Business Poll that E3G did, in case any of the members will be interested to look at that more. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the findings we saw today from you, Joel, and also from you, Alex, on sort of clean energy procurement on an hourly resolution rather than a yearly averages, it just makes more sense. And it can reduce businesses' direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions, and more precisely compared to traditional annual renewable energy matching.
Thanks, Yoko, for that. Just a follow-up question, which is 24/7 CFE. It's getting a lot of attention in Europe and America, both due to the potential changes to the GHG protocol, but also due to falling capture rates of solar and wind, particularly here in Europe. I'm just wondering if you could share some perspectives around what the Japanese authorities should be focusing on with regards to international alignment as we potentially see the proposed changes in the GHG protocol being implemented and therefore, potentially impacting corporates in Japan.
Yeah, I think maybe I do understand that there is a lot of changes going on for the sort of 24/7 CFE to kind of really take flight. I would say that there are some issues that Japan needs to tackle. For example, I did mention a little bit about sufficient interconnector capacity. So these are kind of one of the key barriers for Japan's renewable energy deployment. So we need to kind of really, the Japanese government really needs to think about what sort of level of, regulatory reform or investment needs to happen to actually expand on the sort of grid integration between regions. In terms of that sort of maybe kind of what other countries are doing, to be honest, I think I'm not an expert on the 24/7 CFE. So I'm a little bit kind of not aware of what other country policies are there on the 24/7 CFE. But I do think that there are some, policy regulations and also kind of best practices that countries can share with Japan on this. And of course, I think it's really important for more progressive voices and progressive voices from businesses in Japan to really speak up about the need for 100% clean energy all the time. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Kentaro, I'd like to move over to you now. Can you share some reflections on the report?
はい。レポートというか、トランジションゼロさんがやられたことというのは、非常に膨大なデータを独自のモデルに入れられて、定量的に分析されているというので、一定の信頼性はあるものなんだと思っております。で、加えて、常時マッチング、24/7の CFE というのは、を達成するというので、日本全体の社会インフラコストが削減されるというのは非常に興味深いというふうに思っておりますし、世界の潮流から見ても、日本の時間帯マッチングの流れは来るというふうに思っているので、その際のそういったものを政府が導入するといったことになったときの非常に大きな意義づけのですね、大きな柱になるというふうに感じております。で一方で、私とかはコーポレート PPA を推進したいというふうに思って、再エネの分野に現場で見ているところです現場にいるところですけれども、日本特有の前提条件っていうんですかね、太陽光については適地が減少してきているであるとか、風力の開発の難度というのは欧州に比べて高いとか、あとはその需要地と再エネの適地というところが離れていると、そういったところというのももう少し反映をしていくと、より実態を反映したというような形になっていくのかなというところを少し感じたというところでございます。
Great, thank you. And just a quick follow-up question. As Alex and Joelle show quite clearly in their report, high levels of CFE do come at an additional cost compared to hourly matching. I'm just wondering if you can provide some thoughts or perspective on what Japanese authorities should be doing to reduce that burden on consumers as we look to transition from annual to hourly matching.
そうですね、何かしらずかな補助というものは必要だというふうに思っていますが、需要家側でやるというのであれば、単純に補助金をばらまくというのではなくて、何かしら税制を優遇していくとか、あとはそういった市場を創設してしまうとか、そういったところで抜本的な何か方策というところが、こういったものをしっかりと進めていくには必要なんじゃないかなというふうに感じています。
Great, thank you. And lastly, Shinpei, do you want to share some reflections on the report? And then I'll give you a follow-up question as well.
Sure. Honestly, I was very surprised by this report because it was a bit counterintuitive to what we experience right now. But after reviewing the assumptions, I found it very, very insightful. So in Japan, I think if location constraints for wind power or limitation around connection capacity, as Yoko said, can be eased and its cost gap with solar narrowed, I think achieving a higher national level CFE could be within reach, as this report showed. And also in Japan, although this report shows the battery storage is very, very, how can I say, not competitive, but I feel as a business player, its cost is becoming competitive recently. So I expect the battery is also can be a next step in addition to the wind solar to achieve a higher 24/7 CFE ratio. Thanks.
No, thank you. And just a follow-up question. So at Transition Zero, we sort of see this move to 24/7 CFE as a journey, one that will take a long time, potentially decades to do. And companies and governments should just think about how they can progressively increase the amount of CFE or 24/7 CFE that they do over time. And Digital Grid, your company, has, I think, one of the first providers to release a product on 24/7 CFE. So congratulations on that, and would be good just to get your perspective on, you know, what consumers are saying about your product, what the demand has been, and how you see 24/7 products within the retail sector evolving in Japan over time.
Thanks, Matthew. Well, as GR Cross, as one of the options for customers, we currently provide 24/7 CFE to several companies by mixing solar, hydrogen, and wind power. While it is not yet 100% CFE, of course, but it shows higher hourly CFE compared to solar only. But in practice, as other panelists said, awareness of the value of 24/7 CFE or hourly matching is still very limited in Japan. So I really appreciate this opportunity. Anyway, even though we are collaborating with customers, mainly those operating globally, who share our vision of decarbonization. So while 24/7 CFE represents the ideal direction, it remains difficult to fully achieve under the current system due to the higher costs and limited availability of non-PV renewables. We are therefore very, very interested in how this model can be expanded and what incentives could help accelerate its adoption, including ongoing discussions around hourly certificates. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Alex and Joelle, we have a question/comment around the CCS in biochar. I'm just wondering if one of you would like to answer that.
Let me try to read this. So, biochar, carbon-based building materials such as doka. I understand, I think, roughly what this is about. So, I guess the question is around credits that can emerge from this. Well, how to tackle this? What the hourly matching initiative of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol tries to achieve is to ensure that there is matching between generation and consumption. I have no doubt that the biochar initiative shows promises when it comes to sequestration of CO2. I would just point out that just because we can create a credit that says something has been sequestered, there is still a missing element here, which is to bridge the time of the generation with the time of the consumption. So what I'm hearing from Sumoto-san, the person who asked the question, is that this technology is potentially worthy of including in a technology palette. So we can certainly look into that. I can see how that argument can be made, but I think many of the speakers alluded to the fact that we need to create a little bit of institutional building here to ensure that we can deliver this hourly matching. So I'd be really curious to hear how this can be achieved in the future. So yes, theoretically promising, but let's see how we do the actual hourly matching.
Great, thanks, Alex. It looks like we don't have any more questions, so I think I'll just wrap things up. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we have produced reports on other countries. Those reports are available on our website and include Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, and India. Please do go download and read those reports. The models themselves underpinning the reports will be available on our GitHub over the next couple of weeks, which will allow anyone to reuse the model and reproduce the results of these reports. And then I think lastly, our next phase of this work is going to be around developing what we're calling a clean energy portfolio optimizer, which will allow anyone to redo the type of analysis that we've done for these reports on Scenario Builder. And that is something that we are particularly excited about and will be working on next year. So with that, I'd like to thank my Transition Zero colleagues, Alex and Joelle, for all the hard work that they've done over the last 9 months, possibly more, on publishing this very detailed and thorough analysis, and for their excellent presentations today. I'd also like to thank the panel for taking the time out of their busy schedules to offer their insights and reflections on the report. And last but not least, obviously like to thank everyone for joining in and attending this webinar today. We really appreciate your time. Please get in touch if you have any additional questions, and thank you, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from today. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.